both to my press, Vita and Pensiero, and to Born to Read. I want to say how important your organization is and how we in the United States are trying to do something similar, very similar. But it's very important to understand the contributions in that 0 to 5 period. Extremely important.
Perfect.
So I'm happy to be here.
Perfect. You know that this year is our 20th birthday.
Oh no, I didn't. Good.
So I asked you for a birthday
Oh, greetings! 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 I want to say bon anniversaire.
Auguria.
Auguria! Where am I? Auguria.
I would like to ask you how emotion affect our brain when we are focused either in a deep reading or when we read using a digital device.
So one of the most important things to understand is that when we read, we are using many different parts of our brain. So we are making a circuit that connects. It can connect only a few of the processes, so we can read, decode, but to have true deep reading, we are adding cognition, and we're adding emotion, we're even adding motoric processes. The importance of emotion is much greater than people understand. On the surface, it allows us to have the feelings and thoughts of another person, another historical epoch, another culture. So at this one level, it's very easy to understand. That helps us leave our perspective and learn about our world. It's a very important perspective, however, at a deeper level. And in the last book, Lettura, I used the example of President Barack Obama and our wonderful novelist, Marilyn Robinson, who said, in their conversation, he said, I learned about emotions, about empathy from novels because they taught me who other is. And so at a deeper level, empathy, emotions that are connected in the circuit are actually allowing us to not just understand the other potential characters, but who others are that we might have even considered enemy, or some people who are so different from us, we would never have empathy for them. And Marilyn Robinson said something extremely important. She said the trend towards seeing others as enemies is the greatest threat to our democracy. So on the surface I can say perspective taking, in the emotions that go into understanding feelings, that's really helpful to our personal understanding. But at a deeper, broader level, it's important to our culture and democracy. I'll say one last thing about empathy. Empathy is also something that helps us remember. So it is not simply enhancing the feelings, it's the feelings that will then enhance memory itself. So the more we are attaching even negative emotions, surprise, fear, humor, all of this helps us have an additional aspect in that circuit that helps us remember and store, and then use that information, that experience more. So there are 3 levels of how important emotions are, and especially the act of understanding emotions of others.
Yeah. In fact, my second word was empathy.
Oh, well, there you are.
And I was also to quote the Proust paradox.
Yeah.
Reading is the fruitful miracle of communication in the midst of solitude.
Right. Fertile.
Yeah.
It's that fertile. He used the word beautiful.
Fruit.
Fertile miracle of communication in the midst of solitude.
Yeah, but it's also a paradox because many teenagers use digital devices as a social key that gives them access to others. But if you want to develop empathy and critical thinking, also intuition, you must be alone and read, isolated, etc. So there is a paradox.
There is a paradox. There are actually more than one paradox.
Yeah.
There are paradoxes in this, because on the one hand, our youth are seemingly more connected to other people, and that's a wonderful thing. But then the research actually shows they feel more alone now than ever before, that many of them feel depressed. And there was a wonderful, but still only one study by someone at Stanford named Conrath, who found that the levels of empathy are declining.
40%.
Yes, are declining. So there's this paradox of being connected and yet feeling isolated. So one of the things that I want to suggest, I do not know, I'm suggesting, is that when they are online, they are going so quickly. Da, 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 da. They're skimming, they're moving fast, always faster, fast. They don't have time to really feel. So that it's a surface feeling of connectedness, rather than what Proust was indicating, that when we enter the thoughts of another author or the characters, we are really entering something. So if we are lying on the surface of print, whether it's digital or a book, if we lie on that surface, we don't have time to elicit those really deep feelings. Then there's one other factor, one more piece of the paradox. There are studies that suggest that the more friends that a person has on Facebook, the more lonely they feel. So it's as if, the number, the quantity, not the quality. So we enter again a paradox between quantity of connections, or the feeling of being connected to all this, and the quality of being connected. So those are different.
Yeah.
So I have 3 different big suggestions to parents, and they are 3 different ages. In the beginning, like Born to Read, it is essential for the love of reading to be conveyed by parents to their children. So the more that a parent, from early on, the minute the child can sit on a lap, read to your child. Now this is a problem for many parents, because they think, well, the child can't understand, therefore why should we read? They don't understand that the child's language system, they are coming to this earth ready to hear. By 2 months, their apparatus is already grasping the elements of language. A baby, I love to think about this, but the first part of language that a baby hears is music. So they are capturing in their system the elements of language from early on. And then the more they hear about words, the more they understand what the word is, what the word means. So all of this in 0 to 5 is contributing to the language development, the cognitive development, and the emotional development of our children. Frank Hockenmulder uses the term moral laboratory. Learning the stories, the schemata, from the person you most love, the parent. I use the term in Proust, that reading begins under the crook of an arm. It's communicating love and touch. 2 things are at the very beginning of infancy: tactile and love. So that's the first recommendation. Read to your baby, speak to your baby, and sing. Music, we know, is actually related to phoneme development. So that's the first recommendation. The second recommendation is that from 0 all the way till about 10, I'm hoping that we can have the research. I do not have the research. I want the research to show that the child who is getting most of this beautiful introduction to reading is through books. Tactile, material, concrete, haptic, so that they are ultimately learning to read deeply with books. Then at the same time, it's a tough message, another paradox. I want them to learn this way, but I also want them to learn all the digital skills. It's not either or. It's very important. So they should be learning programming and coding and these cognitive inferential processes and spatial processes and hand motor through digital. So Vygotsky had a beautiful concept of thought is here, language is here, and about 1.5 they come together and get deeper and deeper. Mine is more like 0 to 10, and then coming together carefully. So the second recommendation is the careful building of a biliterate brain, biliterate, so that when they have learned a lot more about deep reading goes and goes, it evolves. But when they have the beginnings of deep reading, then have teachers able to instruct, how do we read on a screen? What's the purpose? And there will be different purposes of reading. Some purposes are like email, please. But important things, how do we transfer deep reading here into there?
A critical approach to...
Very critical approach to deep reading that is enabling them to ultimately read deeply on any medium. They have to be ready to do that. And not to learn the bad habits that we adults have. We have very bad habits. So the third is really for our teenagers. That's a very difficult one. I cannot tell a parent, don't allow too much video games or don't allow too much time. I can't do that. Rather, what I would say is model the joy of reading. And just as you said, the joy of reading in solitude, the joy of reading books, having the experience of immersive reading. They can teach that by modeling, not by forcing it. Also not by saying, if you don't do this, I take it away. No, it won't work. Having them learn the beauty, and that doesn't mean they learn it between 0 and 15, but they will have models throughout that time that then later on, when you don't think they've heard a word you've said, then you say, then they'll repeat things you said 10 years before, and suddenly you say, it was all worth it.
That's all. We have a project, one of our new projects called Rime Bambine, which in English is something like baby rhymes.
Baby rhymes, I love it. I'm going to steal it. I'm going to take it to California.
Perfect, baby rhymes. And this project had the purpose to collect and enhancing rhymes and nursery rhymes, which is part of the oral multilingual local tradition in Trieste, especially where there are many linguistic groups, different linguistic groups. And based on this material that we collected, we would like to create and test new training modules and educational materials. For instance, we are creating illustrated playing card, some of them tactiles, that can be matched together in order to create rhymes.
Good.
For baby kindergarten.
Yes.
And so they can play and match together the card. In this way, we move from your statement that there is in Proust and the squid.
It's in Proust, yes.
that the importance of rhymes and nursery rhymes in acquiring, for example, phonological awareness. And I would like to ask you what other kind of intervention based on rhythm and melody are effective in improving this phonological awareness, another precursor of reading ability, because I think that the statement was confirmed by a famous experiment of Bradley and Bryant that you...
I was going to say, this goes all the way back to the late 80s and 90s with Bradley and Bryant's early research showing that the children who just simply heard Mother Goose, of all experts, Mother Goose rhymes, were better than later in their phoneme awareness and in their reading in grade 1. Okay, so we were always fascinated by that research. And we know that the play, it's both play that helps phonemes, but we were also interested in something else. And this is a more direct and very recent answer. My last PhD student, who's now at MIT in a brain lab, is working on music. And what we figured out at various levels, her name is Ola Ozernoff-Palchek, and she works with the neuroscientist Ani Patel, a neuroscientist of music. There's another one, Nina Kraus. These are 3 people you should know. And they are all invested in the question, what can we find out about the connection between music, phonological awareness, but also music and reading, just what is that connection? And so the first level of the findings shows that it's not what we thought, which is partially involved, but we thought melody, like prosody, all that would be helpful. It's helpful, but it's rhythm. As you almost said it before, it's the rhythm in rhymes that's most preparing the brain for the rhythm in written language, because there's an element in rhythm of time. Timing with phonemes. If you think of the phonemes in any word, lettura, it's not just the sound, it's the sequence of temporal spaces between those sounds that have to fuse rapidly. Well, rhythm has the same properties as what those temporal sequences. So what we're finding is that though melody is lovely and important, in music, it's the rhythm. And so we have various little tests, if you will, of children who can copy rhythmic patterns. And we're finding that you can teach more rhythmic patterns to young children. So an intervention which we have not conducted as out in the schools, just some research, but that might be of interest to you to be working on not just Mother Goose and rhyming, which I love the cards, it's a very good thing to do, but also the rhythmic aspect in some of the songs, especially the songs that they know over and over again.
And also the body movement.
Body movement. And clapping. All of that is very, and all of these things go all the way back to the beginning of the 20th century, when many wonderful people did some of these things. They didn't know why it helped, but if you would even put together so many of the things that good preschool teachers have known for multiple years, now we're showing why. But we want it to be more systematic, not just because a lot of music training is like a little bit here, 1 day a week. In the United States, music programs are being cut. And we are saying, you are doing the absolute wrong thing. You should, in fact, invest in more systematic music in kindergarten and before.
It's perceivable from what you say, and also from your book, that your experience as a mother and also as a passionate reader So I would like to ask you if you want to share with us, I know a memory of your personal relationship with the books, or
my
reading,
sons.
or reading,
Or
or
my
your sons.
sons.
Your sons.
Yes,
I also have children, so I know that you.
So I always thought my first son, who's dyslexic, and that's a difficult time, I thought he will never really enjoy reading. And he would always ask me what my favorite books were, and I think it's useless, you know. But we would always engage in conversation. One year when he was, I don't know, 21, 22, he said, "Mom, I did it." I went, "What?" He said, "I read Anna Karenina." He said, "I took all summer, it took me all summer, but I read it." And now he reads slowly, but he now is telling me things to read. It's amazing. It's like I get chills thinking that my son, whom I never knew would become a reader because it's so difficult, he now gives me recommendations. So that is a very, very gratifying experience. I couldn't be happier. So, but I had to wait. Had to wait.
Yeah.
So that's one of the beautiful aspects. One of the things I most hope, and I'm working somewhat with the researcher in Cattolica University, Daniele Trafficante. We are trying to take some of those principles, and she has a program called Eureka, which is based on our program, and we are wanting to take it into the children who are most poor, and helping to develop their language in all these different aspects. And what you're referring to is the fact that in Ethiopia, there were no teachers, there were no literate people, so that the older girls became the teachers. And what I would love is, and we've done this once in Brazil, in teaching a mother, a non-literate mother, some of these tools, and then that mother became an instructor for everybody else. So in the same way, I can imagine especially in refugee camps, we're very, very concerned about refugee camps, but for the children who are poor, I can imagine that as an interesting thing to add, especially when there are no other people who can teach.
Yeah, but so, the ability of children is...
To children. I have a video, it's an amazing video, where the oldest girl, she probably was 11 or 12, she was drilling the kids. And ABC's, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. She was like rediscovering what every teacher tries to do. But she made it a game. It was a song. They made up their own song. It wasn't our alphabet song. They made up their alphabet song.
I think our children have to learn also by these children.
Yes, it's an interesting thing to add to the mix.
Yes. Empathy.
It's the great mix is to understand that the reading brain begins very simply and becomes this beautiful evolving always till we die. It's changing. And if we can give the joy from the start so that they continue on their own. A lot of people were never given education past a certain point who became great readers. And I believe it became that way because they learned to love. So we want to communicate that too.
Yeah.
So science and love.
Yeah. It's a new slogan.
A new slogan, science and love.
Because in 2016 we conducted a survey here in Italy, which objective was to understand family attitudes connected to the use of digital devices. And from the collected data, it emerged that 33% of parents of children age 0-12 months and 57% of parents of children age 24-36 months use frequently the smartphone as a babysitter. As a matter of fact, children are yearly exposed to digital devices more and more often, and this reduces the time parental and parents and children spend together in other activities. We know, reading, playing, etc. But moving from this data, and if we do nothing, what can happen to the children's brain and how it changes?
This is a very difficult question because the data we do not have in a comprehensive way. We do have some interesting data from pediatric neurologists about parents who read to their children a lot versus not. And that shows that the language areas are being much more activated in those babies whose parents are reading to them. Now, that same researcher, John Hutton from Cincinnati, then conducted a research study, and he wanted to know, it's not the answer to your question, but he wanted to know, so what does the brain do when it's listening to the parent and seeing it, so just like what we would do when we read, or just hear it, or see it all, but no parent, but they'd see everything on the screen. There was no question the brain was most activated when the parent was reading. Second most active was only audio, and only third was the video of the digital screen. This ties into guidelines by the pediatricians in the United States. And I work with one of them, and they are convinced that we should not have digital screens before. First they said 2, and there was too much pushback. So now it's 1.5. And this is based on the research that we know that the children's attention is changing, that they are becoming so accustomed to rapid, continuous stimulation that they aren't content with just exploring, inventing, there's various kinds of boredom. The kind of boredom that children on screens have is, I have to have more stimulation. The kind of boredom that we all had was, okay, now what? Let's go do something, let's invent something, let's create something, let's do something. But this is a stultifying form of boredom. And so what we're very interested in ultimately is a long longitudinal study of children who have no digital input for up to 5 or up to 10. And there are certain religious groups for whom that's true, so we could study them. But right now, the absolute research that would answer your question is only available in fragments. You put the fragments together and you say, I would say to parents, just as I say here, try hard not to do anything but have it available like a teddy bear the first 2 years. Not much. Never as a babysitter. You begin to, the parent begins to depend on that. There's always something to do when you are a mother or a father.
But it's harder.
It's so much harder when there's that little thing that occupies. And I would urge them before 1.5, absolutely. Before 2, just, available. Again, not a reward, not a punishment. And between 2 and 5, a reasonable 20 minutes to an hour, because the kids who are in preschool are seeing it there. So maximize the time with other things between 2 and 5, but not forbidden. Then it's lost. We don't want forbidden fruit. I said in this book somewhere, we are all the descendants of Adam and Eve and that darn apple. So,
thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You hurt me, you did, several times. It hurts to admit that we're no different. I find it hard to commit, but you don't even try. Still I'm better